Kלים Perik Aleph Mishnah Ches. We're going through the various Kedushas of Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim and the Beis HaMikdash, and we've done the walled cities. And we're now going into Yerushalayim. Says Mishnah Ches, Tefnim min Achayma. Going into Yerushalayim, we now have stronger levels of Kedusha. Mekudesh mehem is more Mekudesh than the walled cities. Sha'ochlim sham, Kodshim Kalim u'Maaseh Sheni, which is well known, the Kodshim Kalim, all Karbonos, and Maaseh Sheni can be eaten in Yerushalayim, within the walls. Next, Har HaBayis. We're now moving to the Har HaBayis. The Har HaBayis was an enclosed area of 500 amas by 500 amas in which the Beis HaMikdash was built. And the Har HaBayis is more Mekudesh than the rest of Yerushalayim because the Har HaBayis is now known as Machne Leviah. And the rule is for Machne Leviah, a Metzora, as we said before, is sent out of Machne Yisrael, any walled city. But Har HaBayis, Machne Leviah, She'ein Zovim v'Zovois, Nidois v'Yoldois Nichnosim L'Sham. Those people who are Tomei because of a Tumah Hayotza Alav Mi Gufay, they became Tomei from something from within. They're so Chomur, they're not allowed to Machne Leviah. And Hu Adin, a Balkeri, although of a lesser power of Tumah than a Zov, and a Zova also is not allowed to go into the Har HaBayis. These are all Min HaTorah. Next we go further into the Har HaBayis, we come to the Chel. Round the outside of the Azorah, outside the walls of the Azorah, was a small wickerwork fence known as the Soirig, 11 amas away from the walls of the Azorah. The space between the Soirig and the walls of the Azorah is called the Chel. The Chel Midoraisa hasn't got any particular more Kedusha than the area outside the Har HaBayis, in the Har HaBayis itself. However, the Rabbanan said, She'ein Ovdei Kechovim utmei meis nechnosim l'sham. Ovdei Kechovim, and people who are Tomei Meis, Min HaTorah Tomei Meis is only not allowed to go into the Machne Shechina itself. But the Rabbanan increased that level of Kedusha and said that a Tomei Meis isn't allowed to go into the Chel and inwards. Ezras Noshim Mikudeshes Mimenu. We now move into the Beis HaMikdash itself through the main gates, and we enter the big courtyard at the beginning called the Ezras Noshim. Min HaTorah, the Ezras Noshim has a din like the Har HaBayis of Machne Leviah. However, the Rabbanon said She'ein Tful Yom Nichnes L'Sham. Min HaTorah, a Tful Yom, it's just the Machne Shechina itself that he can't go into. But the Rabbanon increased that, made the Gzeira that a Tful Yom isn't allowed to go into the Ezras Noshim. This was a takana from the Melech Yehoshaphat and is based in, mentioned in Yevomus Daf Zayin Amud Beis. However, because this din is only din Rabbanon, if a Tful Yom were to go into the Ezras Noshim, B'shoigig, Ein Chayovim Aleh Chatos, because you only bring a korban Chatos for an Avera, which if it were to be done by Mezid, person would be Chayiv Kores. Ezras Yisrael Mekudeshes Mimena, we now move into the Beis HaMikdash proper, into the Azorah. Now we're going into the Machne Shechina Medoraisa, and any person who has any level of Tumah on him, She'ein Mechusei Kippurim Nichnes L'Sham, even if he's just the Mechusei Kippurim, i.e. he's had his Tefillah and his Hair of Shemesh, but he hasn't brought the particular karbonos that he needs to make him Torah. For instance, in the case of a Zava or Metzora, he's not allowed to go into the Ezras Yisrael, and if he does, Chayovon Aleh Chatos, this is an Issa Kores if it were to be done b'mezid, and b'shoigeg is Chayav Korban Chatos. The Ezras Yisrael is the word given for the first 11 amas of the big Azorah. After that first 11 amas was another space, another 11 amas between the Ezras Yisrael and the Mizbeach, known as the Ezras HaKohanim. Here, this was the area where only Kohanim went to do the Avodah. And the Mishnah is telling us, Ezras HaKohanim Ukudeshes Mimena, Ezras HaKohanim is more chomor than the Ezras Yisrael, because Yisraelim generally were not allowed to go there unless for a specific purpose. She'ein Yisrael Nechnosim L'Sham, Ela B'Shas Tzarcheim, a Yisrael, a Zor, was allowed to go into that area approaching the Mizbeach, but only if he needed to. For instance, as the Mishnah is Smicha, every Korban Yochid needed Smicha by the Baalim, and if the Baalim was a Zor, then he would be allowed to go up to the Mizbeach to be able to do Smicha onto his animal. The Shechita, Azar was allowed to do Shechita, and of course he would have to go further than the Ezras Yisrael in order to do the Shechita. And the Tnufa, certain Karbonos, certain Menochas, needed the mitzvah of Tnufa. Tnufa had to be done by Baalim, so if the Baalim were Azar, they would be allowed to go further in from the Ezras Yisrael into the Ezras Kohanim to do the mitzvahs Tnufa.